Hey buddy, today we are going to be covering the story called Jorinda and Jorindel. I've never actually heard this one before, well, like most of them. So, shall we dive in? There once was an old castle that stood in the middle of a deep and gloomy wood, and in the castle lived an old fairy. Now this fairy could take any shape she pleased. All the day long she flew about in the form of an owl, crept about the country like a cat, but at night she always became the old woman again. When any young woman came within 100 places of her castle and became quite fixed and could not move and step until she came in and set them free, and which she would not do until she had given his word never to come in again. When a pretty maiden came within that space, she was changed into a bird, and a fairy put her into a cage and hung them in the chamber in the castle. There were 700 of these cages hanging in the castle, all with beautiful birds in them. Now there was a maiden named Jorinda. She was prettier than all the pretty girls had ever seen before, and the shepherd lad, whose name was Jorindel, and he was pretty fond of her, and they were soon to be married. On that day they walked in the wood, and they might be alone, and Jorinda said, We must take care that we don't go near the fairy castle. It was a beautiful evening. The last rays of the setting sun shone down, and the last stones upon the trees, upon the green underwood beneath the turtle dove sang in the tall birches. Jorinda sat down to gaze upon the storm. Jorindel sat by her side. Both felt sad, they knew not why, but it seemed as if they were to be parted from one for another forever. They had wandered a very long way, and they looked to see which way they should go home. They found themselves at a loss to know which path to take. The sun was setting fast, and already half the circle had sunk behind the hill. Jorindel was a sudden look behind him, and saw through the bushes they had, without knowing it, sat down underneath the old walls of the castle. Then he shrank for fear and turned pale and trembled. Jorinda was singing, The ring dove sang in the willow spray, well-a-day, well-a-day. He mourned for the fate of his darling mate, well-a-day, well-a-day. When her song stopped suddenly, Jorindel came to see the reason, and behaved as Jorinda changed into a nightingale. Said her song ended with the mournful jug-jug, and owl with fiery eyes flew 3 times round them, and 3 times screamed, To-hoo, to-hoo, to-hoo. Jorindel could not move. He stood fixed upon the stone, neither weep nor speak, nor sit hand on foot. The sun went down quite. The gloomy night came with the owl flew into the bush. At that moment the old fairy came forth, pale and meagre, with startling eyes and the nose and chin that almost met another. She mumbled something to herself, seized the nightingale, and went away with it. In her hand poor Jorindel saw the nightingale was gone. But what could he do? He could not speak, he could not move from the spot where he stood. At last the fairy came back, and sang in a hoarse voice, Till the prisoner is fast, till her doom is cast, there stay, oh stay. When the charm is around her, and the spell is bound her, hide away, away. Then on a sudden Jorindel found himself free. Then he fell on his knees before the fairy and prayed her to give back his dear Jorinda, but she laughed at him and said he would never see her again, and she went away. He prayed, he wept, he sorrowed, but all in vain. At last he said, What will become of me? He would not go back to his own home, so he went to the strange village and employed himself keeping sheep. Many a time did he walk around as near to the hated castle as he dared go, but all in vain. He saw nothing of Jorinda. At last he dreamt one night that he found a beautiful purple flower. In the middle of it lay a costly pearl. And he dreamt that he plucked the flower, and went up into his hand into the castle, and that everything he touched with it was disenchanted, and he found Jorinda again. In the morning, when he awoke, he began to search over the hill and dale for this pretty flower, and 8 long days he sought it in vain. But on the 9th day, or in the early morning, he found the beautiful purple flower, and in the middle was a large dewdrop as big as a costly pearl. And then he plucked the flower, and set out and travelled day and night until he came again to the castle. He walked nearer 100 paces to it, and yet he did not become fixed as before. But he found that he got quite close to the door. Jorindel was very glad indeed to see this. He touched the door with the flower, and it sprang open, so he went inside the court and listened, and he heard so many birds singing. At last he came to the chamber where the fairy sat, with 700 birds singing in the 700 cages. Then he saw Jorinda. She was very angry and screamed with rage, but she could not come within 2 yards of him, for the flower held in his hand was his safeguard. He looked around at the birds, but alas, there were many, many nightingales. And how he could and how should he find out which one was Jorinda? When he was thinking what to do, he saw the fairy had taken down one of the cages and was making the best way of her way off the door. He ran and flew after her. He touched the cage with the flower, and Jorinda stood before him, threw her arms around his neck, looking beautiful as ever, and beautiful as before when they had walked together in the woods. When he touched the other birds with the flower, so that they all took their old forms again, then he and Jorinda went home. Then they were married and lived happily together for many years, and so did many other good lads whose maidens had been forced to sing in the old fairies' cages by themselves for much longer than they liked. Okay, so I know that's a shorter one than normal. Usually they're about 10 minutes long, but hey, I don't know. I miss you. Okay, have a good day.